Hey, it's Mariana, and thank you for joining me on the Commitment to Growth podcast, a platform dedicated to helping you build resilience for lifelong momentum. We chat about healing, mindset development, and how to live in your authentic truth, because often it's not our problems that cause our dissatisfaction, but everything around them that we haven't yet addressed. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome to another episode of the Commitment to Growth podcast, everyone. My name is Mariana. I am the host of the show and also the founder of Commitment to Growth Resilience Coaching, where I am helping women heal cycles of dysregulation, disconnection, and disempowerment. And one way that I wanted to contribute to this ongoing conversation of how do we heal our relationship with ourselves and the love that we cultivate for ourselves and how we show up for ourselves is by making May's theme how to allow more love into your life. If you are new to the show and to the workings of the podcast, every month I decided in around March of 2024 that I wanted to do a monthly Q&A. So every month towards the end of the month, I release a question submission on my stories that allows you to submit your biggest questions around the theme that we have going on for the month. So of course, this month I released a question submission so that you could submit your questions on how to allow more love into your life, whether that was through conquering blocks to love or fears to intimacy and connection or attachment styles. And as always, you asked such good questions. You never, ever, ever fail to impress me. And I just want to express, as always, my gratitude that I have for this community and just how engaged you are and how open you are to receiving feedback and answers and perspectives and dialogue, because it makes this work so enriching and fulfilling for me. And it just means so much to me to be able to give back to you in this light. So the question submissions for this month were absolutely incredible. And I wanted to switch it up a little bit this month and invite someone who is extremely dear to me to answer these questions. Why? Because this is a person in my life that I have learned and continue to learn so much from when it comes to how to let more love into my life and how to be less hard on myself and instead change that hardness and coldness and perfectionism into compassion and empathy and curiosity for myself. This is somebody who has taken such a pivotal role in my life, and I have gotten to build something so meaningful and special with. And the person that I invited onto today's episode to answer your questions with me is my dear, dear friend, Braden Paes. We're going to roll into the story of how Braden and I became friends and how we got to sit here in front of the mic with you today. Before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about who this very special person is. Braden has built a career for himself as an actor, as a producer, after appearing in Young Drunk Punk, Jan, and the first ever Chinese-American co-production, Oh Boy. Braden had to come to terms with the reality that there were very few roles for people who looked like him in his industry. To change this, Braden began writing and producing projects that showcased BIPOC talent. His shorts, such as Voices of Reason and I Agree, have been nominated for several international awards and have won Best Picture, Best Cinematography, and Best Actor. Braden has garnered a reputation that has allowed him to sit on the jury at the Calgary International Film Festival and a formal invitation to join the Canadian Academy of Television and Cinema. His mission is to ensure that the film and television industry reflects our world and affords long overdue opportunities to BIPOC creators who have historically been overlooked and underrepresented. Most recently, Braden has graduated from the University of Law in England, where he earned his LLB with honors. In the fall, he will begin a master's in sports, arts, and entertainment law at the University of Miami. So aside from being an absolute powerhouse, this human being is, like I mentioned, one of my closest friends. And I wanted to bring him onto the show to facilitate this conversation with me because I wanted to share the dynamic that we've built with you, the depth of connection that we've built with you, and our ideas forth to you, because this is somebody who I grow with every single day I rely on so often to give me a better perspective and to get me out of my head and into my heart and remind me that so much of the human experience lies in the loving and in the loving without expecting and just being and allowing ourselves to flow with whatever we're being faced with at the time that we're facing it. So I am so excited for you to listen to this beautiful dialogue. We answered 5 of your questions on healing from heartbreak, how to open ourselves up to love again, how to cultivate vulnerability in our relationships, how to create friendships where there is belonging and reciprocity and depth, and some of the toughest life lessons that we had to learn from our experiences in love and relationships. So it's a beautiful dialogue. Make sure you've got a notepad or a journal out or your notes app on your phone to take some notes, because seriously, the wisdom that Braden dropped on this conversation with me made me want to just co-host this entire show with him for the rest of its existence. And you'll hear me say that a lot throughout the course of this episode. So sit back, enjoy, release your expectations, get vulnerable with us, and enjoy this wonderful conversation with myself and Braden Paes. Anything else? Any questions? Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. This is
long time awaited. This conversation, this recording has been. Before we get into the brilliance of this conversation, do you want to tell people about who you are and why we're here today?
Yeah, sure. That could be the podcast in and of itself. No, I'm just kidding. As you said, yeah, my name is Braden Paes. I was an actor, still am an actor, kind of in between, and have, shifted into producing and managing, and that whole journey has been a fun one, which you've gotten to see. And now it's just kind of, we're in a space where you want to create good spaces for people. You've spent so long, in the industry in a certain way, and you've seen it for better or worse in film and television, and now you've been there long enough to say, okay, positive change, it's time, and you get to put that task on your back. So that's where I am. And
beautiful.
As we've talked a lot, we're involved in the same work, me as a consumer of it, you as now a distributor of and a coach, and that's amazing. So and essentially that's what kind of brought us together in this space, I guess.
I was gonna say, can we tell a story of how the heck we ended up here as in each other's lives?
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Which
I was gonna say,
my version or your version?
Why don't you tell your version? Tell your version.
Yeah. Okay. My version is, I think that was 2022.
2022.
I think that was 22. Yeah, 2022. Doing the long scrolls on TikTok and trying to find normalcy. I stumbled across your page, and I had dabbled in podcasting for something to do in the pandemic, and I saw what you were putting out there, so I said, hey, why not message this person that is doing some good work and see if they want to be on my podcast. And you responded, which was shocking to me, because I don't know if a lot of your listeners know, you can send like 15 messages out to people and never hear.
It's true. It's true.
So you check your DMs. Anyways, that's my version of the story. And then we kind of became friends because we were on the same line of things.
And then I think what's really cool to share is that, so Braden and I were, like, we had the podcast interview. It was great. Had a great time. Had a great conversation. I'm going to link it so people can go listen to it. It is still available for people to listen. It is still available. Fantastic. I will link it so people can listen to it. But Braden and I stayed in touch. Like, that was October of 2022. And then in July of 2023, I went to Calgary, where Braden resides, because one of my friends there is like a longtime friend, got engaged. And not only was that me and Braden's first time ever meeting each other in person, but our first interaction was I was your +1 to your parents' birthday party, their 60th and 65th, respectfully. And that was just such a testament to, I think, the people that we both are, as far as like community, letting people into like our lives and our spaces. Absolutely. But just the motto of that summer for me was think less, do more. And that was just, I was like, I trust this person. It's a great person. We got along well. Let me just show up.
Well, the amazing part is the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Is you're sitting there being, and we had spoken over FaceTime a few times and whatnot, but it was like, this person is two sides of it. Me thinking, how is this person walking into this not wondering what the heck's happening? And then there's a side of me being like, what if this person's so incredibly different in person than they are over a FaceTime call?
Oh my
Which wasn't the
gosh.
case, right?
Thank gosh.
So, I mean, the universe works in mysterious ways, and thank God that
It does.
was, you weren't a cat burglar and my family is fairly normal, right?
Yes.
But
And we're still here. Almost a year later. Almost a year and a half later since the first podcast interview. So
yeah.
I'd been bugging Braden to do a podcast with me forever. And when the theme of May for this month, so how to let more love into your life, rolled around, I was like, I cannot think of a better person that I would want to help me facilitate this dialogue that we're going to have today, because you're somebody, and I said this in the intro, you're somebody that I have learned and continue to learn so much from when it relates to opening yourself up to more love and giving love. You're such a testament to that in my life.
Thank
so
you.
before we answer the questions, what does letting more love into your life mean at this stage in your journey right now?
I'm glad you asterisk that as at this stage in your journey. Because I think it's a fluid thing. It's always changing, right? Our experiences kind of push us to look at the world differently, for better or for worse, right? And I think at this point, my experiences and learning as a whole, I think we forget that there's so much to learn about love. Like, I think we kind of look at it as this thing that inherently there's so much of it around us that we're just like, oh, we're experts at this. We know how to do it and partake in it. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's something that we all have to kind of, tune into and kind of figure out the nuances. So for me, I think it's just become, there's a love that you want to receive, but the only way to receive that is by being that yourself and just realizing that it is, I'm kind of giving away one of the answers to the questions that you sent me here, but realizing that it's around you and you have to tap into it. And what you want to see is what you have to give out, but it's not a receiving game.
100%.
That's where we're at right now.
I love that. And I know that's been like
Absolutely.
a key theme in our conversations. And just in how we show up to the space that we've created. I'm here to give. And a lot of times giving looks like listening or showing up, right?
Totally.
It's like how you show up in the benefit of the person sitting across from you. So yeah. I love that answer, and I love that we get to do that here today. So for the people listening, these are the questions that were submitted to this month's round of the listener Q&A. So every month I submit a story poll. This month was a little bit different, but it's usually on the last Thursday of every month. And the first 5-6 people that submit their questions get answered on the podcast. So we're answering them today together. And they were so good. I'm so excited. I'm excited to hear your answers and hear what we come up with. So we're going to start off pretty strong here. All of our question submissions were anonymous. So we're just going to zip by them here. The first one is, what advice would you give someone who is healing from heartbreak and trying to believe in love again? Oh my gosh. That's a fantastic question. What are your thoughts?
In the effort to be as transparent as possible, I think when we're answering questions, at least my belief is to give some background on these things and why. You've kind of said how, what qualifies us to answer these. For this first question, what it took me back to, and this story, so we won't get deep into it, but I'm answering this question from the standpoint of someone that not too long ago was engaged and broke off their engagement. And I think taking that as a whole, in some universe, qualifies me to answer this question or provide
100%. Yes.
Outlook on it. And so when we look at the question, what advice would you give someone? I think though it's going to be really painful, you got to get really honest with yourself. And you have to look at your relationship or the situation that just caused you heartbreak and say, yeah, there's a role that this person played as a person sitting across from me, but what role did I play? Did I show up the best that I could? Did I, and going right back to what we said, where I said I was giving away the answer to one of the questions, was, did you give the love that you wanted to receive? Right? And that plays a really big role in it. Because we get in these situations where someone has wronged you in some way, and it's so easy to sit there and be like, they did this and this is why I feel this way. But did you do anything to cause that person to do something? I know I'm not saying you get into like this really big dark hole and say, oh my god, I need to be so corrective of my actions.
100%.
But then the other side of that, in trying to believe in love again, it's like you walk around and you know that you need oxygen to breathe, right? And no one has to convince you that there's oxygen in a room. You just sit there and you breathe and you exist, right? And I think that's the same thing with love. Is we sit there and we say, love looks like this. Were you prepared for this?
No, this is so good. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm totally kidding.
Why am I here? Like, just answer all of these questions. Are you kidding me? This is why...
It's building
God, you hold such a good spot in my heart. Keep going. Keep going.
Thank you. Know that is mirrored in every way possible.
Thank you.
But it's what you tune yourself to, right? So you could say, there's no love in the world. I don't believe in it. I don't believe it exists. When your neighbor just bought a really fancy sports car and is out there every day cleaning it and making sure it shines, that's pride, and that's a form of love. And if you tune into that, it's there. It might not be the love that you've been seeing, but then that plays into like expectation, right? Can we expect anything of anyone, or do we just create the environment in which they can be that best loving selves that they are? And I'm gonna end it there, and I want to hear what you have to say.
That was so good. Get out of here. I not only mirror everything you said, but I also, what you mentioned about expectation, right? I think when we have our heart broken by someone or by a situation, when it comes to doing the work to open ourselves up to the possibility of love and intimacy again, or in whatever form that looks like, right? Romantic, aromantic. What we fear isn't love, it's everything that causes pain. And what I mean by that is, it, like you said, love is like oxygen in a room. It's always around us, because it's not like you broke up with somebody or somebody broke up with you and you, in all situations, have now closed yourself off from love from your friends, right? That's a great example. If you were closed off from love, you probably wouldn't be going to your friends and talking about it. You wouldn't be leaning on your parents, the people around you, right? So understanding that it's not love that we fear, but everything that happened either in the absence of love or what caused us the pain, whether it was somebody controlling you, whether it was somebody lying to you, whether it was realizing that person wasn't right for you, right? Love has never ceased to exist. It's just that there were conditions that didn't get met for you to experience that love in the way that you wanted to, but that doesn't mean that it can't be felt again in other ways. And taking those experiences as learning points to understand how that love can be enhanced better in the future.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you bring up a good point there when you talk about conditions, I think, and we've had this conversation before about,
we've had all these conversations before. That's why we're here.
Really, we're just giving people an insight into what we talk about on the daily.
Exactly.
Conditions and rules are synonymous, right? And when you go into that reflection of how did I show up in that relationship, we all have a set of rules for what makes us feel loved, respected, cared for, all that kind of stuff, right? And so when people are sitting there saying, I'm healing from heartbreak and I'm trying to believe in love again, I think you get really clear on what is your set of rules for you to feel love, right? Like there's that whole thing of love languages, and I'm not qualified to talk about love languages, so we'll touch on this and we'll move away from it very quickly. But if one of your rules is that, hey, I need to receive gifts, that's how I'm going to feel loved. But the person across from you is not the gift giver. How can you really work in that space? right? What
Mm-hmm.
becomes more important? So now, are you going to adjust your rules or conditions, or are you going to hold that person to that standard and say,
Yes.
hey, you can't love me? It's a personal choice. I don't think either way is right or wrong, but
I love that you brought this up because I think I talked about this on one of my recent episodes as well. You checked me on this a couple of months
ooh,
ago after um a women's circle that I held close to home. And I remember I got home and my mom and my sister had attended that circle. And we got home and, like, the circle wrapped up. They helped me clean up the room that we rented. And then we went home and it was never talked about again. Never.
right. I remember this.
And I'm cringe at this now. But again, this
No, but
is
that's
where
growth.
this is that's growth, and this is where honest friends are so important. I remember I came home and, like, a couple hours later I was ranting to you. I was like, it never got talked about again. Like, my family just shoves everything under the rug. Like, it feels like it didn't happen. And then you said, Mar, what if the way they showed you love was by showing up? The way that they showed you love was by sharing. Your sister took pictures at this event that now you're using unlimitedly for your social media and for advocating this movement that you've got going on, right? And it was just such a self-check of, like, exactly like you said, how are you expecting other people to show you love in the exact way that you think you need it? And I don't say that to diminish anybody's needs or take away from, like, core ways that they might need to be held and seen, but sometimes it is loosening your grip on that expectation and saying, like, there are other ways to experience love if you look at how people are loving you in their own way. And there's so much beauty and growth and depth to be built from that, right? So
Absolutely. And that
mhm.
that plays into like the read behind the lines. That's not a thing. Read between the lines, right? And
Mhm.
where and I don't remember where it was. And
Mhm.
someone was saying, I love you, those words can come in so many forms. And they sometimes take the form of, please put your seatbelt on. I made
Mhm.
your morning coffee.
Mhm.
Is it the right temperature in the house for you? And so it's just tuning yourself. If you look at life as a game, we're all here to have fun. We're all here to
Mhm.
explore, understand. No one knows what happens at the end, and really no one knows to a certain degree how the beginnings start, right?
Mhm.
So why not make it easier on yourself? Like if we're all kind of making up the rules as we go along, to some
Mhm.
extent, like yeah, make it a little easier. Don't be so hard on yourself.
Exactly. Look at how people are giving to you, too. I love that.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. I love that first answer. What a way to set the tone for the ones that are coming up here. The second one, again, very strong. I love this question. I'm trying to become more comfortable with vulnerability in my relationships, but still find it very difficult to open up. What tools would you recommend for combating this fear? I have a pointer that I want to speak to on this question, and
Please.
I think it's really important to acknowledge the language that we're using because language drives thought
Mm-hmm.
and thought drives
Mm-hmm.
behavior and feeling, right? So when you say combating this fear, you've already put yourself in a position where you see yourself as either a victim to or less strong than the fear that is bringing up a certain feeling within you or bringing up certain behaviors within you, right? I talk a lot about
Huge.
holding fear by the hand and understanding that fear isn't here to work against you lest you set the conditions for it to do that for you. It's actually, how is fear serving as a teacher or a guiding light for me to see when is it coming up, what is triggering it, who is triggering it, what are they saying, all that stuff that then leads to a certain response. So my first, I guess, point of advice to this person would be look at fear as an opportunity. Don't put yourself in a fight with fear because you automatically take your power away when you do that. That's the point that I wanted to make. I don't know if you have anything to add, or if you just
That's
want to
that's huge.
give your answer.
No, no, you summed that up so well. I don't think I can add to that because it's so true, right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
it goes right back to how do you want to play the game? Is every day
Mm-hmm.
getting out of bed a fight, or is it hey, I get one more day? on this earth, right?
Gosh, yeah.
And man, your clients are lucky to have you spitting that
Oh,
wisdom at them.
thank
Um,
you. Vulnerability.
right? And I
Vulnerability.
think that's something that I think everyone struggles with this. I don't, from
Mm-hmm.
the people that I've had the pleasure of talking to and having in my circle, I think it's always there in the back of people's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Then it runs into, am I being too much? Am I opening up enough? Blah, blah, blah. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important for people to keep in mind that studies have been done to show that there's two fears. And let me preface this by saying, yes, we are all individuals. How do you break this down in a way that is kind of understandable, where yes, we are all the same, but there's things that make us very unique. So I thought of
Mm-hmm.
plants. As you know, I love to garden. Hate it, can't stand it. But when you look at the basis of a plant,
Mm-hmm.
Mariana gets these analogies all the time, and I don't know if this one's
I
gonna
love
fly, but
it.
we're gonna
It's
try.
so good. It's so good. Please keep
We're gonna try.
rolling. Keep
Okay,
rolling.
then so you have a plant, and all plants, no matter where they are in the world, where they grow,
Mm-hmm.
they need water to a certain degree. They need sun, and the way they produce energy is the same. You have leaves; they take in the sun. It's green, blah blah blah. These kinds of things, right? That's how a plant grows.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same across the board. But what
Mm-hmm.
makes the plants unique are when they bloom, and you have different colors, and you have different shapes, and you have different sizes, and all that amazing stuff. So now,
Mm-hmm.
when we kind of put that onto our lives, go back to what I was saying. There, studies have shown there's two fears that are universal amongst humans.
Mm-hmm.
Am I enough? And will I be loved? We all have those
Mm-hmm.
fears, right? But
Yeah.
those fears come from different things, right? So it's all the
Mm-hmm.
same fear, but it's been imparted on us by friends, by family, by relationships, all those kinds of things. So
Mm-hmm.
when you take that into your friendship or whatever the relationship is, it levels the playing field, because all you're
Mm-hmm.
keeping in mind is we're two people. We
Mm-hmm.
have our uniqueness, which is your flowers and your size and all that kind of stuff. But the same thing is the fact that you are a plant and you are growing the same way and have those same fears. So now it takes that out. And if you just show up as you and understand that that person is probably just as afraid as you are,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that you understand that, and the fact that you're even, whoever's question this is, the fact that you even answered this question shows that you're tuned in to a certain level here where you
Yes.
can just meet people at that, in that space, and say, hey, I know that you're probably fearing this, so I am going to, you know, do something that I may have in the past thought was too much. So I'm going to put that out there, so now maybe you'll feel more comfortable, right?
Yes.
Or I'm going to
Exactly.
show love to this person, like we were talking about before, our original answer. I'm going to show love to this person in this way, and maybe it'll bring them out of their shell so that they can show love. So hopefully that wasn't too far off in left field,
No,
and
no, no,
your
no.
listeners
I
get that. But
agree.
yeah, it's easy.
Fine. Maybe I'll say it like this. It's not that it might not feel easy, but it's actually simple. And I think once
Yeah,
we bare bones see it like that, and I think the pressure that we put on ourselves in these situations is that in order to be vulnerable, I have to be okay with being vulnerable. Or in order to
yeah,
be vulnerable, I can't be afraid of being vulnerable. And I think one of the most beautiful things that you can do is when you're entering a conversation where you're going to be honest about something that you've never told this person, or in past relationships you didn't say. One of the most beautiful things you can do to start that dialogue is, I'm actually really afraid to tell you this
mm-hmm.
right now, because in the
Yeah,
past it either wasn't received or it wasn't met with the same level of depth and understanding, or I've just never stated this before. But I want to take this
totally.
opportunity to do this because I think it will deepen our connection, but also to show you that I value when you show up in this way, and also me expressing this fear to you, but the importance that I see in stating this thing that I want to say to you, that purpose to do that and to see past the fear is your expression of love to that person,
Totally.
right? And that's not to say
Yeah.
that if you don't overcome your fears, you're not loving the people around you, but what that is to say is that when you share a space with somebody where it's co-creation, where there's conscious dialogue, there's conscious intimacy in any form, you're choosing to grow alongside that person by holding your fears by the hand and saying, hey, let's work through this together, or let's surmount these fears together. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. I think when the fact that you said it's growth, because there's this progression of where you come into this, and I think it works the same with people. You come into that knowing nothing, right? You don't know that person. You don't know how they're going to change your life or whatever it is. And then there's all that growth that happens, and vulnerability is stuck in there. And I was kind of thinking about this question earlier. Why do people have such a stigma or a fear around vulnerability? And when you look at the last, I'm going to say 20 years, because I think that's, I can remember back that far. When you look at when you look at what we are exposed to as people watching relationships, having that background knowledge in film and television, and understanding that, we are bombarded by these celebrity couples, for better or for worse. Sometimes I think it's for worse, because, hey, they have personal lives, and are we really respectful
that we're never let into? Exactly.
Right? But we're shown this really wonderful prepackaged version. We are given this prepackaged version of what a relationship should look like, but we're not given, the 5 minutes before or the 5 minutes after, right?
Yes.
It's like when you take a picture, and I don't remember the analogy, but it's like you're seeing that moment, you're not seeing here, you're not seeing here.
Exactly.
And I think what people forget is, on the bookends of that moment is the messy, right? Is when people get it wrong, is where they learn, is where that growth comes from, is where you say, hey, sorry, I feel this way, this is what it is. And in that response too, and I could talk about this forever, so I'll end it here, but in that response of that person to your vulnerability, you're meeting that person at a certain level. And if they can't accept that, or don't want to accept that, or that's not their thing, I think not a lot of people are talking about, have that pride in that's how you show up. And if it's not for that person, that's okay. That's okay. There's going to be someone out there that's for, and you just got to keep going.
Keep going
with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I this is the last thing that I'll say on this too. I was listening to an episode on Matthew Hussey's podcast, the love and relationship expert. He just wrote his book Love Life, and this episode was about how our instincts when we're in a certain dynamic with somebody that we're either just meeting, or there's like insecure attachment, we have this instinct to settle our culture to theirs. So like, for example, if they don't respond to your text in 2 days, then you don't respond to their text in 2 days. Or if they're not vulnerable with you in this example, then you're not vulnerable with them. But that's exactly what harms us as individuals, right? Is stepping out of our truth and the standards that we want to set for ourselves in love and relationships. But also, exactly what you said, like, some of the strongest things that you can choose to do is to stay within your own culture. And back to the first question about, well, what if it's not met with that reciprocity? What do? It's, don't use those examples as a reason to close yourself off from the possibility of opening yourself up to somebody who will meet you. Because that's the other thing too, right? Is if we've only ever experienced more rejection than we have reciprocity, then we're basing our am I going to do this or not on the bad times, right? But it's not until somebody comes along and meets you where you're at that you can step into that safety and say, oh my gosh, no, there are people who want to meet me at this level because they see the value in that. So adhere to your own culture was like the summary of what I was trying to say.
No, that's huge. And sorry, I know we said we'd move on, but one thing I'd like to add to that is just going to be, this is the podcast, just one thing we'd like to add to Charlie's things, is, we're outcome-based species, right? We go into anything, and again, it goes back to what we were saying. If I give this, I get that. And I think it's changing the whole game in that sense, in terms of, why are you talking to that person? Are you talking to that person to get a date or make them your significant other? Or can you switch that into, I'm going to talk to this person as a person, and I want to leave them better in their day than they were before meeting me. And it depressurizes everything.
Yes.
Right? It takes you out of that, am I being too vulnerable? Am I too much for this person, to just being you?
Yeah.
And
just stepping into giving. It doesn't have to be easy, but it can be simple. You know?
There you go. Exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
I loved that. That was beautiful dialogue. Thank you to the person that submitted that question and the first one, both amazing questions. The third one, and I'm really curious to hear your answer on this one, is what is a life lesson about love and relationships that you wish you knew sooner in life? Oh. Let me just take the knife out of my heart first.
Right? God. Who signed me up for this?
I did. Seriously. I said yes.
Honestly, stop searching for it and stop making concessions. You know,
tell us more.
If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. But go out and love everyone. Go out and love everyone. Make that your standard. Don't wait. Do not wait for that perfect moment when you're on the plane flying from Italy to Paris and you're sat next to that gorgeous person or whatever it is. Don't wait.
Yeah.
Because this amazing thing happens. And I think it's like, again, relate this back to my work. And you know this. You know, I spent a large chunk of the last 10 years writing romantic comedies. And you get to a point where you're like, man, why does this stuff just flow? Like, am I that like torn and broken inside? That it's so easy
the total opposite.
Thank you for reaffirming that. But it's so easy to sit there and create these situations of like just this amazing, amazing love and then this amazing, amazing heartbreak. And then you're like, whoa, what's going on internally? But if that's taught me anything, it's just go out there and love everyone and everything, because this amazing thing happens when you're not searching, and that just becomes your brand or your flavor, where all of this love starts to pour in.
Yeah.
And then it's this crazy thing where you're like, and this will be answered in another question, they're just so wonderfully put together, you must curate these or something.
I know.
But everything just starts to flow, and then you have to kind of look at it and say, is that me? And be really real with yourself. And assuming it is, it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Yes. I know I'm so glad that you said that. And I said this at the beginning, but that's one of the biggest things I've learned from you is like the art. It's not even an art, just the simplicity and the beauty of just giving, and without expecting anything in return, but also exactly like you said, like for the sake of making somebody's day better. That is to give, to show up with kindness, with respect, with giving. And the way that life just becomes so easy, because you're just recognizing not only like the capacity within you to give and how that on its own replenishes your soul and your cup, but also just the way that the right people will see that and want to return it to you, not because they feel that there's strings attached, but because you ignite that flame in them to say, hey, I can give as well, and do the work to give even deeper by showing up in vulnerability, in honesty, all that stuff, you know? So I love that answer. Yeah. I think we all need to remember that every single day.
Well, they can always listen to this over and over again.
I can always listen to it.
Not at all for the listeners or the views, just purely
for the reminder. Oh my gosh. What is a life lesson that I wish I knew sooner?
Yeah, tell us.
Gosh.
Please.
I'm like toggling between two right now.
Give us both.
No, I think the one that I'm feeling the most called to share right now is a conversation that happened between my godmother and I recently. Okay. So, she was over at our house and we were having dinner. She just got into a relationship, so we were kind of talking about like the inner work that it takes to, like, exactly like we were talking about, opening yourself up again. And I can't remember exactly what I was talking about, but I said something to the vein of, oh, I think that's why in the past I've been afraid of romantic love. And my godmom stops me and she says, what is romantic love? And I just kind of sat there and I was like, I don't have an answer for you, which is just insane, right? And she says, that's because there's no such thing as romantic love. And to the people who are listening to this and raising their eyebrows, hear me, please continue to hear me out, because there is a beautiful moral from this dialogue. She says, the second that you label love into different forms, romantic love, friendly love, coworker love, sibling love, right? You, like we said earlier, you start, again, language drives thought. So you start having different conceptions of how you have to show up to display or give or create that kind of love. But she says, love is one form. Love is one form. The second that you label it, you're taking away from the experience that it is to just love someone, to love someone, because they are who they are and because you have created what you have created, regardless of the form it takes. And it just shook me so much, because I was like, man, it's so true. Like, we're so concerned with making love into a certain form or expressing it in a different way. And of course, perhaps the landscape is different when you share it with somebody that you're in romantic partnership with than you are in a friendly relationship with, right? The way of meeting each other is different, but at its core, it's love. The same source, the same life force that you share with a friend, a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, whatever, right? So I think that was really key for me, and just understanding, like, it's just about, again, stepping into that mode of giving, stepping into that mode of wanting to make somebody's day better, to, like, deepen your capacity to love, because not only does it deepen with that person, it deepens with everybody around you. It might just look, how you express it with different people might just look different, you know?
Absolutely. That's huge. And it reminded me of, we're going to bring Carla into this podcast. Mariana knows Carla. But I was chatting with her the other day because she picked me up from the airport, and we'd gone back and forth about something, and she said, she's like, oh, did you worry whether or not I loved you? And I said, no. I said, yeah, she said that to me. I think it was over a loaf of bread, and whether or not Carla makes the best bread ever. I swear there's a moral to this. Your listeners are probably like, what the hell?
Bread is love. Bread is love. Just like a gift is love. Just like a hug is love. It's all the same.
But that's the thing. That becomes your baseline, right? And
yes.
She said, were you worried that I didn't love you? And I said, no, never. But what I want to know is whether or not you actually like me. And this was said in a very joking way. But the point of it is, if love becomes your baseline, then you never have to worry about that, right? You never have to, it's never fleeting, it's never running away from you. You're going to go out there and you're just going to love everything. Good day, bad day, whatever the person does. But it's whether or not you like the person, because you can make a choice, right? If you live on the baseline of love, your choice then becomes, do I like you? And maybe this sounds awful. You can go and you can love a lot of people, but you might not like them. They might not be the person that you want to have around your dinner table, but you don't want anything bad to happen to them. You want them to get home safely, but you just don't want anything to do with them.
That's okay.
Like and love, that's 100% okay. I think we all have those people, and that's all right. Nothing to be ashamed of. But when like and love kind of meet each other, I think that's where that like magic starts to happen, because not only are you deepening that feeling within me and I within you, but I like that and I want more of it, and I'm gonna continue giving that. So shout out to Carla.
Good. Shout out to Carla. We love you. We do.
It's amazing.
That was a wonderful submission. Thank you to the people who always submit, like, for personal answers. I love getting to share a little bit of personal insight. And thank you for your take as well. Fantastic. As always. You should just co-host this entire show. I love this.
Hey, have your people call my people. And
I will. All right. Number 4, second to last one, is what steps can someone who is trying to believe their worthiness of affection and love take to open up to receiving more? I love this question.
This is like me vicariously living in the 50s when there were like advice columns. This is my version of that, right? Like,
It's okay.
like the
It's
Ask
okay.
Abby. Me, I am Abby. No, I'm totally kidding. This is
It's
amazing.
okay. The first thing I'll say is I think when it comes to believing our worthiness of love, it's not just like I said this again in my solo episode this month, how when life puts people in situations in your life, like you get the job offer, somebody expresses interest in you, a friend shows up to work with your coffee order, right? That's life's way of telling you you deserve the love I'm trying to give you. But you might not be at a place where you fully believe that you're worthy of receiving it. But I think because and again, whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever higher form, I believe that those higher forms are always driving us towards love and seeing the love in all things, and therefore the love that we're capable of receiving and giving. So if you look at the examples in your life that life is placing in your path to tell you, open yourself up to the possibility that I'm trying to give you, open yourself up to the feeling of love, the romance, the passion, the closeness, the intimacy that I'm trying to get you to feel and experience, the next step is what is stopping you from allowing yourself to believe that. If we're too afraid to receive a certain level of connection or intimacy from other people, we first have to do that work on ourselves. So I know one example that I gave in my Growth Hour Sisterhood Masterclass this past week was mirror work. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but it's kind of like affirmations, but you take it a step further and you look at yourself in the eyes in the mirror as you're telling yourself things that you want to internalize. So I am beautiful. I am worthy of receiving the kind of love that I desire, because it's in expressing that to yourself in the discomfort, right? Because it's never easy the first time that you're like, I deserve the love that I desire, right? Because there's going to be parts of you that jump up and say no, because, and they'll have a million reasons, right? But in doing that work to sit in the discomfort and knowing that on the other side of discomfort is the acceptance, is the surrender to the possibility, you're inching yourself a little bit closer to and away from the fear of, I don't deserve this, I can't have this in my life, right? So it's really, in my opinion, a process of looking at what's hindering you from receiving that kind of love and doing that work safely, compassionately, patiently, on your own and with other people. Again, expressing, I'm afraid of showing up in this way, or this is really new for me. How can we create a safe space together to inch a little bit away from fear, to open yourself up to the possibility of what happens if I show up in this way and it is received the way that I want it to, or better. You know, it's loosening your grip on fear for long enough to see the other side, is my answer to that.
Totally. That's a good answer.
Thank you.
That's a very good answer. And
Thank you.
And to your point about loosening your grip on fear, we've had this conversation about faith and fear being neighbors, right? So it's which one do you subscribe to? And again, that sounds simplistic, but to your listeners, next time you have unshakable faith that you can do something, or excitement, and the next time that you have just this like stomach pitting fear, take a second and maybe journal about it or keep a mental note, and you'll start to realize how those two things, like, I wouldn't even say they're next door neighbors. They live in the same house. It's just a different room.
Do you have an example from your personal life?
So, okay, here. I was working on a television series. It was very close to like my heart. It had to do with my family and my upbringing. And you now have to go and pitch it to like Amazon, Warner Brothers, Hulu, Disney Plus, all that kind of stuff. And people in the industry can be kind of ruthless in their commentary. And you have to sit there and really believe in what you're putting forward. And I remember I was pitching to Amazon at this point. And it was soon after I heard that tidbit of advice at Faith and Fear, our neighbors. And I was feeling really, really nervous, like really scared. And all those questions run through my mind. Is it good? Did we spend enough time? Did we write it? Oh my God, this is Amazon. They can like make or break your career, all this kind of crazy stuff. And then I stopped for a second and I said, okay, that's the fear. And maybe it's valid, maybe it's not, but I'm freaking out. And I said, but what if it all works out? And the more that I focused on what if it all works out, I started to get kind of excited. I started to see Amazon in a different light. They're not going to make or break my life, but it's just another person. And the only thing that changed, it wasn't really the feeling in my stomach that changed, but it was welcoming more of it on the faith side versus on the fear side, trying to get rid of it and try to push it away. So that feeling stayed the same, but one was fueled by the worst and one was fueled by the best.
And it's not, I don't want people to listen to this and say, oh, like that's such toxic positivity, right? Because you can, I think the human experience is both and. Like you can have that fear, like you said, it was still present, but you chose to flip the coin over and say, well, I can focus on my faith. What you, what's the saying is where attention goes, energy flows, right? So
absolutely,
how you showed up to that pitch was probably different than if you had already expected the ruthless comments and the criticism and everything, right? So it's what are you willing to open yourself up to in the face of fear? Instead of letting
100%.
fear drive what you think the outcome will be. Because I can recall so many conversations that you and I had, like early in getting to know each other, where I was like, I'm so afraid to say this to this person. And then you were like, that's great. Tell me more. And I was like, what? You want to know more? Are you sure? But again, that's it takes one person. It takes one person to prove you wrong, but it's the simultaneous work of willing to let yourself be proved wrong. You know?
Totally. And you know, and two things on that note. The quality of the presentation that I was able to give from that space of saying, what if the greatness happens? I know that I knocked that presentation out of the park. Full disclosure, Amazon's not making my TV show, right? And that's, hey, slates change, people change. You know, that's just, it is what it is. It's like a marketplace. If you're going to look for strawberries and I give you a cantaloupe at Superstore, we're not playing the same game, right? And that's just what happened. But I know that presentation came across so much better now, so much more able to tell that story. And like you said, where focus flows, energy goes. Party to that is, it's how you look at life. Is life happening to you or for you?
Yeah.
And that's what is going to set the tone for that. You know? So if you look at every experience in your life as, this is happening to me, this is happening to me, this is happening to me, life kind of starts to suck a little bit because all these things are happening to you. But when you start to kind of change your outlook and say, hey, what is this trying to teach me? What can I learn from this? And I'm saying this as the direction to, you know, the toxic positivity, because I understand people from the outside hearing us chat. It's like, man, these two people are always up all the time and things are going great and they're saying all these things. That's not the case. So it's when you start to look at that and you say, well, you know, this is what I've subscribed to, this belief of relationships are challenging, love is challenging, or it's, hey, in this relationship, what was I trying to learn? What was trying to, you know, come at me for that? And I'm going to segue that into my answer to the question.
Beautiful.
Which is, you know, I kind of took a little bit more of a methodical approach to this whole question. And I said, if I was sitting across from someone and they'd asked me this, what would I tell them? And I said, first, I'd want you to get really, really clear on why you feel that way. You know, why do you feel that you're not worthy of love or affection, or just maybe not worthy at all? Because usually in my experience, I think the solution to a problem is firmly rooted in the problem, right? So in this instance, I said, okay, you know, did you get cheated on? Or are you telling yourself a story because something didn't work? And if you can pick out those little things, you can say, okay, you know what, I'm feeling unworthy because, just for sake of ease, let's say someone, you know, cheated on you. Okay, so now you're taking that person's actions and reflecting that on you and saying, well, if this person, you know, found someone else while we're still in a relationship, that must mean that I'm not worthy, I'm not meeting their needs, whatever it is. Well,
Mm-hmm.
potentially true if you want to believe that. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I learned in the last year is that we as humans, we aren't necessarily honest with each other, right? We will
Mm-hmm.
delete 85 to 90% of an experience of ours to form it in the way that we want to see it. And that's kind of universal across the board for
Yeah.
humans, right? You
Yeah.
just see what you want to see. So if you want to see negativity, you're going to see negativity. If you want to see positivity, you're going to see positivity.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to look at that and you say, okay, how can I change that around? How
Mm-hmm.
can I make this work for me? What was actually happening? And then you should be able to see in that, maybe it's not that you're not worthy, or the stories that you're telling yourself were incorrect in that sense, but you can start asking yourself, why am I worthy of love? Why do I deserve more?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And you start to ask yourself those better questions, you get better answers. So instead of,
Yeah.
why did this person cheat on me? How am I going to take this and make sure, maybe you can't make sure it never happens again. You can't control people. You can say, how am I going to put my best foot forward? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I worth more? Did that meet my standard?
Yes.
But I think in that, it's easy for us to say all this stuff, but there's this chunk of it where the individual that's feeling that, you really need to dig in to that, give it a try, and subscribe to that in a sense of, if you want to feel worthy, you will find ways to feel worthy. You will find that evidence, but you have to want that. That has to become that burning desire, no matter what. Because let me tell you something, whoever's listening to this on the other end of it, you are worthy. You're a human being. Go back to that flower analogy. You deserve to grow. You deserve love. You deserve all that. You just have to believe that you deserve it.
Exactly. And to the point of where focus goes, energy flows, the second that you start looking for the reasons why you're worthy, the reasons and the people and the situations that prove that in your life will become abundantly clear, because our brains are wired to look for the things that we focus on. Because now you have a focal point in your mind of what you desire. Look for those things and always come back to, why do I deserve those things based on how I show up, based on the person that I am. If I'm not somebody that would cheat on somebody, I don't deserve to be cheated on. If I
100%.
would sit there and listen to somebody who was having an anxiety attack or who was going through something really difficult, I'm the kind of person that does that. Therefore, it must also be possible for me to receive the same. Because if you want to give it, I can guarantee you that there's somebody that wants to give it to you too. All right. Number 5 is currently realizing that my friendships are not very fulfilling spaces and wanting to start creating deeper relationships. How can one begin doing the work to seek closer friendships? I'm gonna say the same point on the language drives thought piece. And it connects what you said about, to question number 3, stop looking for it. I think if you're in a space right now where you are wanting more of that depth in your life, the moment that you go out and you're like looking to see who is providing you that, every single thing that turns you off and isn't aligned with, I want a deeper, more intimate friendship, you're gonna immediately write that person off. I think the question actually has to be, who do I have to become, or what energy and values do I have to express and radiate so that people who align with those things will either be attracted to me or will get into that level of conversation more naturally. Because again, if you're looking to see who can give you depth, if you're looking to see who can create safety for you, I'm not saying that that isn't a component of it, because obviously if you're getting to know somebody and you're gauging the level of depth that you can get into with them, maybe even how like political your conversations can get without it getting like too feisty, right? You're intrinsically wired to look for safety, but it's more about, what do I want that safety to feel like? Why is it valuable to me? Rather than looking to see how their actions dictate that for you, if that makes sense. It's, how do I have to sit in myself to be open to that safety or to create that safety? If I'm not receiving it, can I open dialogue in some way to create it or open the space for those more vulnerable, open conversations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
What's your
and
take?
And something that I've gone back and forth with a lot in the last few years. You are the grand total sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So you can't change people, but you can change people.
Oh,
so
elaborate.
Yeah, right. I know. So you cannot change how a person shows up. So if you have a friend that is always forgetting their wallet, let me tell you, and be the slight bearer of bad news, that friend might always forget their wallet, and you can't change that. But
he's not talking about me, by the way. He's not talking about me.
I'm not talking about Mariana. It's actually quite annoying. She always has her wallet with her. But you can choose not to invite that friend out as much as you do. And that's not a reflection of you as a person. That's a reflection of the standards that you have for yourself. So to throw another cliche in there, if you're constantly judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree, you will always be disappointed. And I think that's a universal truth. There have been studies that show that as you age up, it is harder to find friends and make closer friends, because you're just not in the spaces that you were when you were 5 years old and you were in kindergarten and you would talk with anyone, right? And when you also look at those friendships that you had from being 5 years old when you were in kindergarten, you would talk to anyone, they were based very loosely on proximity. Who was in my, arm's reach, which was probably like 2 feet at that time. If I could slap you, you probably became my friend, right? Because we could then go and like hang out on the playground. Don't slap your friends; it's illegal. But that's what it was, right? And so at that point in time, if you're lucky enough to have aged up with those friends, you didn't choose those friends based on values, beliefs, work ethic, anything like that, right? But as you grow, one thing I do know is, and especially from my personal experiences, is you're put in spaces where, especially working in film and television, right? You're constantly put in spaces where you are questioning your core beliefs and adopting new ones. And a lot of the time you work away from home, right? And so you go and you're working on something for a week, a few months, whatever it is, and you make a whole new circle of friends because no one wants to be lonely, and you're all working on the same project and it's easy, all that. And it changes you as a person, for better or worse. And then you come home to this unit that has known you for the past, I think my closest friend now, we're 26 years we've known each other. And you're starting to realize that there's a little bit of friction because you don't match in some ways, whether they've grown while you've been away, or you've grown, or it's just, hey, you live in this city where this is the norm. And so that can be a little bit scary. But one thing that has always helped me in that sense is, it's like when you have your husband or your wife, right? Why do people go and have girls' nights, or guys sometimes go to the hockey game, or you go to an aquarium with your kids versus your partner? It's because there's different interests, right? So looking at your friend group and saying, I know my friend of 26 years, he loves hockey. And that's one thing we still have in common. So when we go out, maybe we watch a game, maybe we go to a game, we're talking sports. But that friend of mine, it's going to be a very different conversation than the, producer that I met at a film festival who's now become a really good friend. We talk work and we go for different types of dinners and we have different people. So it's not that those relationships have become less deep, or I can't have that friend anymore. It's just changed. And I think
not everybody can meet every single one of your needs, and I think we also shouldn't expect that. We save ourselves from a lot of grief when we take that expectation off of the people in our lives, because everybody's intricate 100%. And different in their own way.
100%. And there's that thing, it's like, take me as I am, not as you want me to be. And I think it just depressurizes everything.
Yes.
Right? 100%. That friend that forgets their wallet is, like I said, gonna continue to forget their wallet. So instead of you see them 3 times a month for lunch, you see them once every 2 months, and you are more than happy to pick up that bill. And guess what? You'll never be disappointed. They'll never be disappointed. I'm not saying that you should ignore all boundaries and not have that conversation, but I'm just saying it's as simple as that. And I don't think it needs to be that pressurized. I keep coming back to that because this question, this person is talking about fulfilling these spaces and creating deeper relationships. Just let it ride and they'll create themselves. Stop looking for it, show up. Be you in love, be you in kindness, and just magic will happen if you
just
sit
be
in those spaces for long enough.
I agree. And one point I want to add to that, because I think questions like these can feel like you have to go outside of what you already have to get more. But I would encourage this person to look at the relationships in their life right now and how can you create abundance within what you already have. Because maybe the reason why you're not getting a certain level of depth, it comes right back to what culture are you creating for yourself and how are you standing in that, right? Maybe the reason why you haven't experienced depth is because you haven't facilitated or opened the dialogue to experience that depth, or for somebody else to show you that depth, or for you to show that depth of yourself to somebody else, right? Maybe you're not showing up 100% as who you are. Why might that be? Like, I think about the people that I've had any kind of relationship with, right? There's a reason why you're drawn to those people, right? Because people are mirrors of not only who we are, but who we want to be. We see things, our souls see things in people that we either want to step into or skills that we want to develop. Again, whether it's a friend, a potential partner, a coworker that we really admire. Like, if life is a mirror, how are the relationships in your life currently reflecting parts of you that you either need to step into, that you have to grow out of, or that you have to look at? There's a saying in Spanish that goes, lo que te choca, te checa. And what that means is what bugs you, checks you, essentially. Like, whatever is making you angry, or maybe the reason why you're craving depth is because you're being called to get deeper with yourself right now, so that you can get deeper with the people that you're seeking that depth from. Because I don't think that we always have to look outside of ourselves to create it or find it. To your point about you can't change people, but you can change people. It's not that you're changing people. It's that by you standing in your essence and your culture, you influence people to meet you at that level. And the people who choose to will, and the people who won't, that's okay. But you get to take that pressure off of you have to become a certain way when you're so firmly rooted in who you are and what you know you can give,
Yeah. And that was big. That was really big. And while you're saying that, I took as I was taking that in, I kind of took a left turn and was like, okay, we have all these questions that people are asking, and having been, and I'm sure you can relate to this, having been a person that has submit questions, maybe not to you, though I have submit questions, and I'm glad they never make it here because they're not great questions.
What are you talking about? They have,
except for the ones where I'm like, hey, you should put me on your podcast. This is the manifestation of that, right? It's true. If Marianne ever shows her audience this, there is literally like, when are we doing ours? That's my question. And
here we are.
But being someone, here we are. It worked. That's all I want to say. Is
manifested
it worked. Just keep submitting.
He stood in faith instead of fear.
Exactly. No, but when you're, I can't help but feel very empathetic for the people that have submitted these questions, because sometimes you can be in a dark place. You can be in a dark place with all of this stuff, because dating, love, relationships is not easy, especially today with apps and with just people not communicating as much, and the spaces that we live in, and just society as a whole right now. And so I want to empathize with those people and say, I get it. And when we say all this stuff and we're here laughing and having a great time, it sometimes can come across as like, hey, well, look, it's easy for you to say you're on the other side or you have friends. And we've been there. We've been there. And I was coming home from London last week, and I was watching a movie on the plane, and it ended with this quote by Winston Churchill. And it said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. But it's the courage to continue that matters.
Oh, I love that.
And so to everyone that is listening to this, whether it was your question that was answered or you're going through something, just remember that success is not final. It means there's always room to grow and achieve more.
And the
Failure's
fact
not
that you were
fatal.
even open to like asking it and
There
receiving
you go.
feedback, right? It reminds me of
Exactly.
the Jim Rohn quote that is like my desktop picture. It's success is not a doing process, it's a becoming process. And I think that's the same with like any relationship that you're trying to create, any kind of self-love that you're trying to create. It's a process of stepping more into yourself and becoming a version of yourself that you can show to the world. It's about who you're
Yeah.
becoming for yourself.
That's all that matters. That's all you have at the end of the day.
That is all you have. Exactly. Thank you for contributing your wonderful wisdom to this conversation. I'm glad we finally got to do this. It's been a long time coming.
Right?
But before I let you go, because you were a wonderful guest, I have to treat you like every other wonderful guest. And as you know, every guest on the Commitment to Growth podcast gets a rapid fire round of 3 questions.
Okay.
So the first 2, I know I didn't tell him, but the first 2 are the same for everybody. The third one is unique to you. So are you ready?
Okay. Well, I'm a little bummed out that the 3 aren't unique, but I'll take it. I'll play the game. I'm just kidding.
All right. Your first question, and it can't be what you just answered with, is what is your favorite quote?
Ooh, this is easy. But I'm going to butcher it, and it's not so much a quote as an idea. And it's that a plane is off course 90% of the time, but it still reaches its final destination.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you say it to me all the time. That's so good. Did you come up with that?
That's why I have a plane tattooed on me.
You do?
No, Tony Robbins. Uncle Tony.
So good. We love that guy. Shout out every day. Okay, your second question is what song is currently stuck in your head?
You know, asked me 2 days ago, and it was Echo by Olivia Dean.
Oh,
but
yes,
I know, right? Go listen to Olivia Dean, everyone.
Yeah, me and Braden are her like number one fans.
And maybe one day she listens to this, and yes, we would love to accept your offer of VIP backstage.
We would.
But I recently, and you know this, I just saw the Amy Winehouse movie, Back to Black. Fantastic movie. Tears dry on their own.
Oh,
that
sit down. So good. Right? I love that.
Thank you.
And your third and final question, take a breather.
Right.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I think so.
Beautiful. What does acceptance of self mean to you right now?
Ooh, acceptance of self. What does that mean to me? It means self-awareness of how I'm walking through life and understanding that I'm learning and growing while having this picture of who I want to be, and giving myself that room to potentially fail and not meet my standard and be okay with it and say, hey, you kind of have that target that you're hitting, and maybe it's an imperfect target. Maybe we never get there because we change along the way. And it's just accepting that self and saying, hey, I step out of bed every morning with the agreement between myself and myself to put that best foot forward. And sometimes you miss the mark and you get annoyed and you yell at someone, or you cut someone off in traffic, or you don't show up the way that you want to. But that's all just a learning experience. And the best part is when if you identify that and you say, hey, that's not me, that's not my standard, and can pivot. It's about understanding that that pivot is always there and not being so hard on yourself for making that mistake or learning, because you're committed to fixing it or improving upon it.
Yes. Failure is never final, was what the quote said, right?
Failure is never fatal.
Never fatal. Yes, exactly. Oh, I love that. Thank you for answering those questions so impromptu. And for every other answer that you gave into this beautiful dialogue, I'm very sure that people are going to get a lot of value from this conversation. Where can people find you after this? Because I'm sure you've got a few fans after this conversation.
People can at Braden Paes on most social media. Paes Arts, Entertainment, and Sports is the new thing.
Yes.
If anyone is listening and you want to be in music, in sports, in entertainment, you want an agent, you want a manager, someone to help you, come talk to us. And,
he's your guy.
He's your guy. We're growing, and we'd love to grow. We'd love to grow with you, but we're growing from the standpoint of, what matters more than than the money and the fame is you and your art and your purpose. So hit us up. Come find me.
Could not think of a better person to fulfill that mission than you. Braden, thank you so much for joining us and for your wonderful contribution. And I'm glad we finally got to do this. It's been a long time coming.
We did. And thank you for all the work that you're doing, not only for, I get a lot out of this, but for everyone that gets to listen and hear and see your stuff. It's good. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I will talk to you very soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for tuning into this conversation today, everybody. If it was your first time hearing the Commitment to Growth podcast, I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure that you subscribe to stay updated for future episodes. And if you're a returning listener, I hope that it excited you, it stimulated you to learn, and that you took lots and lots away for how to enhance the love that you let into your life and that you create with the people in your life. If you enjoyed this, make sure to share this with a friend, subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, I recently shifted hosting platforms, so there's a good chance that you might have been a subscriber, but now you are not. So check that your subscribed button is on, and if it's not, please make sure to click it and stay updated with the show and everything that is excitingly coming out in the next few months. To stay connected on social media, it is at Commitment to Growth on Instagram and TikTok. That is where I post all the episodes on the show, but also all of the work that I'm doing behind the scenes in my coaching practice and offers that I've got rolling out for you and freebies. And I'm always giving back to this community, whether it's sharing thoughts, writing an article. So stay connected so that you can get more doses of resilience coaching in a sip from me there. If you yourself have questions about the podcast or you want to be a guest, make sure to send me an email. It's commitmenttogrowthpod@gmail.com. It is also in the show notes description. And if you want to stay connected to what Braden is doing, have work alongside with him, to have him be your manager or a producer for anything that you're working on in your personal or professional life right now, all of his contact information is in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. I hope you are allowing yourself to allow more love into your life. I hope you know that I love you and appreciate you so much for being here and taking the time out of your day. I hope you know I don't take it lightly that you choose this platform as your dose of growth and personal expansion. And I am so excited to continue this journey with you. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next episode.